Out of everything that we love about Souls, the lore, the characters, the combat, I think that PvP is the thing that they need to get right the most. In my opinion, it's a vitally important part of anyone's first playthrough, and I think that the game with the best PvP system will be the one that everyone plays even years after its release. So, over the next 12 minutes, I'm going to run you through everything that the network test has taught us about Dark Souls 3's PvP. Let's see where things are headed. First up, let's talk about how you invade. You invade using the Red Eye Orb item, similar to in Dark Souls 1. This item lets you invade as many times as you want. Miyazaki has stated that players will no longer be locked behind consumable invasion items, which is good for encouraging invasions. Additionally, players are now matched on soul level, not soul memory. And finally, I had really fast invasions during the test, so everything's looking good on that front. Everyone's biggest concern in the network test was that you could only be matched with hosts who had summoned help, meaning that most of your fights were against multiple players. Most fights involved teaming up with a Red Phantom for victory, like you see here, or it meant overcoming multiple opponents all by yourselves. Most of your fights were 1 versus 2, or 1 versus 3, or even 1 versus 4, which is pretty brutal. But the thing to remember is that this was probably intentional. From Software probably wanted to fill these worlds with as many phantoms as possible. This is a network test. They're doing it to stress test their servers. So while I'm really scared that this mechanic will remain and that invading multiple opponents will become the norm, I want to believe that it's just a feature of the network test. So let's hope for that, hey? Players did adapt to this system in the tests. It was really common to invade a fight club, where you fought one enemy at a time in a civil manner, while this panel of judges watched on from above. The dried finger item was really useful after every invasion to reset the invasion timer, and as a result constant PvP ensued. If you're a red or white phantom, you appear in another world with roughly 70% of your health. You also invade with half of your remaining Estus. Both reds and whites can use Estus flasks to heal both health and mana, and it's interesting, most fights in Dark Souls 3 that were long and drawn out revolved around the efficient use of these flasks, because killing other players actually rewarded you with Estus so that you could continue fighting. Killing an invader as a host gives you 3 Estus, killing an invader as a white phantom gives you 1 Estus, and killing a white as an invader gives you 2 Estus. So this does a lot to encourage fights between the host and the invading player, encouraging the host to hunt down the invader if they're low on health or mana, and encouraging the invading phantom to hunt down the white phantoms until they can take out the host alone. It meant that invasions lasted a long time and were fueled by constant battle. Take the 2 white phantoms in this clip, for example. They were kind enough to die so that I could keep my health topped up, and it let me keep up that pressure until the host was left alone, and I still had all the Estus in the world. Speaking of healing, it's nearly instant now, and almost twice as fast to take effect as in previous Souls games. However, in Dark Souls 3, after your health comes back, your character stands still for a really long time, meaning that yeah, it's really easy to get your health back if you need it, but it's also very easy to get hit after you heal. Look at this guy. He got hit way too many times, and he used his Estus really inefficiently, and I think he's just realizing that I killed both of his phantoms. He ended up getting away from me in the end, and at first I was really annoyed that he got away, but now, in retrospect, it's kind of funny, because now he has to fight the boss with no phantoms, and no health, and no Estus. So I win. I'm pretty happy with the way healing is right now, because it's possible to defeat your opponent both by overpowering them when they have Estus, and even by backstabbing them if they use their Estus badly. It's good to have both options, I think. Speaking of which, let's talk about backstabs. They're usually a pretty controversial topic. Everyone remembers the lag backstabs of Dark Souls 1, everyone remembers missing a backstab in Dark Souls 2 because you had to punch them first, and well, no one really remembers backstabs in Bloodborne PvP, do they? In Dark Souls 3, I think they've finally figured out the perfect backstab system. In Dark Souls 3, the animation for backstabs is similar to in Dark Souls 1, where it's quite instant, but it is also possible to whiff a backstab and miss, like in Dark Souls 2, if you're not positioned properly. The whiff animation has you perform the backstab animation, but without locking your opponent into place. See this clip. my backstab attempt still hits the enemy as if it were a regular attack, and he doesn't get locked into place. And backstabs are a good mechanic. They do deserve to exist, because there needs to be something to punish players who leave themselves exposed. For example, if your opponent spams parry, you deserve to be able to backstab them to counter it. If your opponent heals too close to you, you deserve to be able to punish them for that, unlike in Bloodborne. Dark Souls 3's backstabs allow you to do these things, but they aren't completely unfair like in Dark Souls 1, where players could take advantage of the bad netcode. No longer can you do running backstabs, no longer can you really fish for backstabs, and I feel like I deserved all of the backstabs I got, which is a pretty good thing. In previous games, simply by virtue of backstabs existing, certain strength weapons were just bad, because it was easier to backstab punish a slow weapon. Well, not this time, because slow weapons actually have really good tracking. Check out these clips where I was using the greatsword. My character can pivot along with my target while I'm carrying out the attack, which is a huge buff to strength weapons. This increased control is a big deal, because strength weapons have traditionally been really bad in PvP, because it's easy to punish them, so I reckon they're going to be more viable this time around. Before the network test, I thought that charge attacks were going to be really bad. Charge attacks are charged up by holding down R2, and you can release it for massive damage, but charge attacks really do benefit from the improved tracking. Some weapons, like the battle axe, even had charge attacks that would carry your character far forward, and these attacks honed into whatever you were targeting, so they could close the gap in PvP, and they were a lot easier to aim than I thought they would be. Moving on. If you break an opponent's guard, you can perform a guard break riposte, similar to in Dark Souls 2. You can do this by kicking them with their shield up, you can deplete their stamina while they have their shield up, or you can use the guard break attack for the short sword weapon art R1. I think it's really important that players get significantly punished for bad stamina management, or for just leaving their shield up when it doesn't need to be. This mechanic does really help the depth of the PvP. And that short sword might just be my favorite weapon so far. It has a really simple moveset, and its weapon arts give the weapon a depth and a versatility that it's never really had before. And I was honestly surprised at how much depth weapon arts added. If you don't know, weapon arts are activated with L2, and they give you access to new, powerful moves that consume mana. Souls games have always revolved around the weapon that you choose, and I do think that weapon arts give that weapon more character than ever before. Let's talk poise. The rule in the network test was pretty much, if you get hit by one attack, it's very likely that you'll get hit by a follow-up attack before you can roll away. While most attacks will stagger your character once, there are certain attacks that grant your character hyper armor, preventing you from getting staggered. The greatsword, for example, seems to have hyper armor during some of its swings, particularly the weapon art, which certainly makes you able to tank any hit. But this poise, it's definitely subject to change. I mean, everything in the network test is subject to change, but we do know for a fact that equipment load hasn't been taken into account in this demo, as every character you played, regardless of whether it had heavy plate armor or light cloth, it was able to roll around without any drawbacks to using heavy armor. So it is possible that armor and poise simply wasn't a factor in this test, so maybe it's still being worked on. There's a long time till this game comes out, remember? Another interesting thing is that poise can actually be granted to you when you cast miracles. Guys, this makes me so excited for miracle-based characters and also magic-based characters, because both miracles and magic have benefits that are granted to you when you press L2 with a catalyst or a talisman. So with miracles, when you press L2 instead of L1 to cast your spell, your character is granted this yellow glow and a ton of poise, allowing you to cast spells in your enemy's face without fear of being staggered. Now this does come at the cost of a little bit more mana, but it's a very powerful tool. With this, you could tank an enemy's melee hits while casting Lightning Spear to do even more damage, or cast Heal when you're in the midst of battle with a bit more confidence. If more melee-based miracles are introduced, I expect the Paladin archetype to be a really good force to be reckoned with. In regards to sorcery, if you press L2 with a catalyst equipped, it grants a damage buff to all of your spells for the next 10 seconds. So I was really excited when I played the Academy Assassin class. I found it to be the most versatile in the network test. Soul Greatsword was fantastic for cutting down a group of phantoms, and switching between Soul Arrow and Soul Dart made it really easy to get in some hits from a distance and just chipping away at phantom health, which is really useful. All of these tools are really useful when you're fighting a group of enemies, because it gives you versatility, which is the most important thing. Sometimes you have to attack from a distance when they're engaging with other enemies, and having that control over the battle was great. I mean, I didn't really like magic in previous Souls games in PvP, but I have high hopes that it's going to be good in Dark Souls 3. That was a lot of information to get across. What do you guys think of it all? I'm looking forward to reading your comments down below. Personally, I'm cautiously optimistic. I really want this game to be a game that I can PvP in for the next year or so, because Bloodborne just didn't offer that for me. Here's hoping they get it right. I sincerely hope that they do. The next video will be on PvE highlights from the network test, so if you weren't lucky enough to get in, let me run you through it. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Looking forward to covering this a bit more. Cheers.